Hi Year 7s, this is part 2 video about how to apply and model shapes to your bunyip or mini sculpture creation. And so we're going to start with, we've made the body shape already, which we did in the last video. And I'm just going to show you a few tricks for actually modeling your piece of clay work. Now, you're going to have to go back to your design and perhaps modify your design and draw in any changes that you discover as you are building. And you're also going to have to use something like a knife to do some of the cutting of this particular piece of work. All right, so what we have in front of us is just a rough body shape of the creature. I'm wanting to apply some eyeballs and different things to the creature, but I'm first going to show you how you might change the shape if you need to. So I'm just going to take this knife and looking at the side of the image here, just going to flatten it out a little bit. I want it to be a little bit taller and longer. I also want it to have a separate head section that comes from the body, not a separate head section, but a head section which comes from the body of the creature. Now, if you want to create a separate head section and add that to the body, you will need to roll out a small amount of clay like this, whoops, in your hands, make a ball. Now, some of you have drawn up some really brilliant little creatures that have got, you know, big heads and so on. Now, again, just by the same process, cut the ball not quite in half this time. You're actually going to cut it a little bit less than half, and this time I'm actually going to cut it with a knife. So I'm going to cut the ball like that, so I have a sort of rounded shape. And again, I'm going to draw about 1 centimetre from the top and hollow out the shape. All right, now I'm going to use my lock and key, which is my glue, toothbrush dipped in water. I'm going to make sure that on both surfaces, that the clay is thoroughly joined. I'm not quite sure what this is going to look like on the top of that one. Now, if I have this part built on this part, we know we've got a hollow inside here and we have a hollow inside here. Air must be able to get through between the two shapes. So before you do this, you will need to use a hole punch, which looks like this. On your larger models, you will use an even larger one. And you're going to create a hole, sorry about all those people with trypophobia, and you're going to add this on top. Again, little wiggle until it stops moving, and then you're going to smooth over that join. Now, sometimes when you add additional pieces to clay, you will need to add a small, like snake or quill, as it's called in clay work, of clay to join something on. I'll show you that when I start to model the arms and different parts of this particular little fellow. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually create the three-dimensional features. So I want this little one to have very big blobby eyes. So I'm going to actually create 2 eye sockets by pressing in to the eye sockets. And I'm just fitting the eyeballs for the moment. When I've decided that they're the right size, I'm going to use my glue all the time. This glue has to be used to create the surface, and I'm going to fit this one in here again, little wiggle, and on this one here, a little wiggle to get this guy on, and we have 2 eyeballs in place. Now, you're going to create quite a lot of detail in your work. I've got a pre-squished piece of clay over here. And so I have pressed this between my palms to create a piece of clay that I could use as eyelids. I'm just going to use the knife to cut that in half. And again, I'm going going to use a toothbrush to add an eyelid to this little fellow. So he's got an eyelid on the top there, and hopefully a little eyelid on this side as well. All right, when you are finishing these creatures, you can actually, these little fellows, you can actually bring some false eyelashes and maybe even glass beads for eyes if you wish. So if you just want to leave the spaces for some of those things that you're going to add on, make sure that you know you're going to actually get them. The other thing is to create a mouth. You're going to slice the model and you're going to actually open up the lips to create a type of mouth. Now, you'll find that the clay may stretch here. If any little gaps develop or anything like that, you need to make sure that you have smoothed over all the cracks with your finger while the clay is nice and smooth, and also pay some attention to the inside of the clay work. I'm going to add some arms to this little guy, as well as some feet, and as well as some teeth later on. So just in order to show you how to model the clay, I've rolled out something that looks approximately like an arm, and this is going to go somewhere here at the side. I'm going to just press to create a palm on the end of the arm, and with my knife I'm going to cut a thumb and then a little wedge out of there. So I've got a little like a little glove shape, and then I'm going to cut a couple of fingers, which I'm going to model and press to create an interesting looking hand, which can be moved into different shapes. Like I can bend this finger down, and I can also add some details on here later on of like the rest of the palm, model out a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to join this little guy's arm on to the side. I've got a little dent there ready to go, and this little arm is going to end up on the side of the model. Now, I will need to get my toothbrush. I'm going to have to create a rough area on both the parts that I want to join, and place the arm in place. Now, I'm going to have to pop my finger inside just to support that clay, because as I press on there, it needs to have a little bit of support. Now, this time I'm going to use a clay tool so it doesn't actually stress the clay too much. And what you can do is reinforce the parts that you join by adding a small roll of clay like this to the inside of the join, and smoothing that over with your clay tool at the same time. Okay, so then all of these can be worked very carefully. You can start to do little things like hollow out an eyeball in the eyes if you wish to. Again, apologies to all you trypophobics out there. And other details to my little bunyip monster. After you've created all of the limbs, feet and so on by modeling them, you might have wings or whatever on the back, you might have teeth or a tongue down here in the mouth, you're going to need to press textures into the clay. Now this can be done in a number of ways. You can use any of the tools and use them as a way of creating scales.
Mayon, could you come to the office, please?
And parts like that. So you can create very textured areas, or you can use any kind of tool to press into the clay to create interesting textures. What you need to do is make judgments about what looks good and what doesn't. Remembering that this is your practice piece and that we are practicing all of the things we might try on our final piece in this little guide. All right, get ready for the next video on texturing.